with all the pros that Rancher brings, why do you think it's still not as widespread as Kubernetes or as popularly adopted? And for that, I think, Toni, you're going to give us a short introduction to Rancher so that the people who are not familiar with it can get a clear picture.
Rancher is Kubernetes management platform, so it's not a Kubernetes itself. Rancher is also a company, Rancher is a product, and Rancher has Rancher Kubernetes engine. So a lot of things are called Rancher or has Rancher in the name. So maybe the question was a little bit coming from that not clear what Rancher really is. So I'm not going to give like a sales presentation of Rancher, but I just want to highlight how we at Montel use it and what we found to be working for us. There are a lot of features that we are not using and so on. But let's see how our organization is using it. Okay, so 100% open source, and Rancher Labs developed it originally, and Rancher Labs is now part of SUSE. And I think Rancher has at least one other project which is on the CNCF track. So what we use it for, we use it to simplify our cluster management. This is a screenshot of production clusters that we monitor and take care of. And it includes AWS clusters, AWS Ecos clusters, Google clusters, RKA provisional clusters, so there are all of the clusters that, or most of the clusters that we take care of are consolidated in here, so we can have a simple way to look at them and have our like Montel Care personal on-call officer to go in and inspect problem if some cluster has a problem. So we build clusters differently. There are many ways. Terraform is a nice way to build them, and we have two ways of doing this. Or basically, there are many ways, but we use mainly that we use Terraform Rancher provider. So we call the Terraform against our Rancher, which creates the cluster. Second one we use is the RKA, which is kind of the engine of Rancher, the Rancher Kubernetes engine is called, and that is a command line tool that has also Terraform provider. So we just define the clusters and it sets up the cluster, and then we have to manually import it to our Rancher interface. And then there's a nice way of when you need to do something quickly, test or evaluate some product, we just click and create the cluster through the Rancher UI. And of course, there's the importing. So what it brings, because you saw that we have at least 3 or 4 different kind of clusters, we get unified meters to all of our clusters. So Google clusters, AWS clusters, Azure clusters, they all have the similar like dials or meters we use to check the health of the cluster. And the other thing that we use is the Grafana, which comes quite nicely packaged in Rancher. So we have a customizable, ready packaged Prometheus Grafana instance. So we have kind of the dials for all the clusters unified like this. So we use it to update our clusters. This is, of course, not all of them can be updated through the Rancher, but ones which have been provisioned with RKA or Rancher itself can be updated kind of like this. So it has 3 versions of Kubernetes are usually available. And yeah, it makes life simple for people who might not be so much into Kubernetes. So this makes even the updating a little bit more easier and easy to approach than doing it the Kubernetes hard way, for example.
If it's not your priority to manage everything from the command line and you just want to run the cluster, then it makes it definitely easier to handle.
Yeah. Another feature we use is like this. We have 2 approaches. We can use this global Rancher global DNS feature, but it has a little bit limited set of providers. But we happen to use Cloudflare and Route 53, so we use this in combination with Cert Manager, which comes next, but to direct the load workload, the traffic to our workload. External DNS has a little bit more providers that can be used, but I think they are based on the same principle that when you annotate something on your ingress, it will automatically create this DNS entry for you. And which is really nice when a developer can just make an ingress and doesn't have to think anything what happens after that. After a few minutes, he has a working DNS entry to his program he's developed. Certificate management is always, if you are not doing it daily, it's always like, usually the certificate has gone old and you have to fix it now, and you don't remember anything what happened 2 years ago when you last did it.
And the client is in fire.
Yeah, so this is one way of doing it. It is not actually a Rancher feature. It's just nice UI that works with Kubernetes certificates, but it makes life easier sometimes when you need it. Other thing we use is Cert Manager, which is CNCF project which issues the certificates automatically. And actually, what you're seeing now is how Rancher shows you the automatically provisioned certificates.
And I think you just said something which is quite like one of the main values for Rancher as a tool, which is that even if it comes with very nice things, the let's say like the nicest thing is that it gives a very friendly and a very simple interface in which you can see all these things that you can also access them through to the command line, but it gives you this tool in which it's easier to have everything handy on the same place.
And yeah, it basically not. Let's face it, not everybody in organization is CKA certified, whatever I happen to be. But okay, you have different levels of understanding of Kubernetes, and Rancher is a nice way to give first read-only access. That this is our workload, this is our thing. If something goes, if some alert rises, you can go and look and try to see what is the problem. Of course, then when you are more seasoned Kubernetes user, you take kubectl and use it, or you can mix and match. Sometimes on a train, you might not have access to your kubectl. You can just look what is happening through the phone, and that's nice backup. So what we use Rancher frequently is, well, user and group management to give access and manage the access of people who need to access the clusters. For developing and debugging, I quite often evaluate some project with completely fresh cluster, just there's nothing running on that cluster, and I just know that, okay, now if it works, the thing I'm evaluating is set up correctly, and then I can go some other cluster and try how it works there. And rapid prototyping, just clicking through UI and having a pod running, and when you are satisfied with the result, I sometimes take the YAML as a basis of the actual YAML that is going to be in GitOps, for example.
Yeah, and I think also one comment that Lucas just brought up, we were talking about this during the previous session that we had planning this meetup, is that as we were talking, like Rancher, it's like a specialized tool. Like it's not like Kubernetes is the core. It's like the foundation for everything. And then on top of that, you can have different platforms or different tools. And then Rancher, it's just one of those tools. So it's even though it might have all these nice things, it's not still like it's just like a user interface, to call it somehow.
Yeah, exactly that. If you have Rancher installed, you cannot run any workloads. You need the Kubernetes cluster that the Rancher manages. And quite honestly, if you have only one cluster, Rancher might not be for you, because then you have the overhead of running the Rancher and then one cluster. But as in the first few slides, we have many Kubernetes clusters that are running, and we monitor them. So it really makes sense for us to use it. Here's just features that I have not been able to really dig into yet, but there's interesting things like Longhorn, which is a distributed disk made by Rancher company. The new Rancher UI, which makes the digging into your workloads even more intuitive. Okay, and all of this, you can see that I have not even looked at yet, but they are readily available in Rancher if needed. And
there's a question for Toni from a different Toni. He's asking if it's possible to manage the Rancher 2.5 add-ons from the command line, since all the docs point to this new Explorer UI, or like how do you manage all these add-ons, like Prometheus, for example?
Yeah, it's like the configuration of Prometheus and Grafana was new in, like that it can be customized, is new in 2.5, and I just started to dig into it. So it is done with config maps and like with YAML, so kind of with command line, yes, but I'm not very confident to answer that, because I just started to look into it like last week, or when did we update our Rancher to 2.5?
Right, but it seems like they use the same underlying Kubernetes object, so it should be possible to do it somehow.
Yeah, if I remember now correctly, it was config maps or that define what kind of or was it a custom resource definition for alerts? When you define like Grafana alert manager alerts, it might be custom resource definition, and some of configurations were config maps. Like so with YAML anyway.
Okay, so it is possible. Thank you. Hope, Toni, that it helped clear out your question.
Also, Olli has commented that the Longhorn that Toni mentioned is another CNCF project from Rancher.
Yeah. So K3S and Longhorn are the two CNCF projects.